Although I'm not in recovery, I support it 100%. And, they often told me that. And I said, you're right. And my mother, who often said, put on your big girl pants, let's go. Put on your big girl pants. And she just said it to me again yesterday. Sometimes you just got to put on your big girl pants. I'm like, you're right, Mom. And so these are the mantras, right, that stick in your head. And you have to have them sometimes to get through those days that are often very difficult.
All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Hart Hustle Podcast. Today is going to be an incredibly special episode because we have a social worker turned CEO changemaker. Karen Carpenter joins the show today. Karen, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
One time you were at a conference and you saw a group of people lobbying for a specific healthcare type of service, and you said, that's it. What was that?
I was a director at a facility for people with developmental disabilities, and I attended a conference on human service lobbying. And I said, wow, I get it. I all thought lobbyists were guns and oil, but you can actually lobby for human services. That's fantastic. That's it. That's what I want to do.
Why was that something that was so inspiring to you?
Well, because as you said, I am a social worker. I say a social worker by trade. And I care about what the world looks like for the people who live in it. And, how can I go about effectuating change to make it better for the people to live in it? And from all walks of life, for any issues, diseases, et cetera, you've got to learn how the bill becomes a law. You got to learn how to influence, policy and make policy. So that was the only way I knew how to do it.
You've had quite the experience in making policy and influencing policy as well. Now, you're the CEO of Vanderheyden. You guys have been in business for over 190 years serving the community. But let's listen to a little bit of the origin story about Karen. So how did we become the CEO? What was the journey like to get here? And what other things have you done in your career?
Well, that's kind of long. I feel like I'm getting older. I don't feel it, but people tell me, I've been around for a while, but, I think it's, again, started a direct practice social worker, wanted to make changes. My mother still has an article that I wrote to the local, animal shelter, an opinion piece when I was 10 that said, I didn't think they were being cared for very well and we need to do something about it. So what are we going to do about it? So, fast forward now, some 35 years. I think, throughout the years of direct practice social work in a lot of different areas in government and the private sector and the hospital system, it really is, which is our motto here at Vanderheyden. How do we change lives to save lives? And any individual, any child that comes in here now, really doesn't see that future as bright as we want them to. So, clearly, I feel like, I've been using that for a long time, that phrase, because it's so meaningful to what, if you're coming into an ER and you need to have a problem, if you have, alcoholism problem or you have a domestic abuse problem. That was one of my best trainings to be an ER social worker, because you have to do it quick, right? I'm not really a good long-term therapist. I think you and I talked, I have the eureka effect. This is what you need to do. Well, you can't always do that in long-term therapy, but you can in the middle of an ER because it's emergent situations or it's crisis. And I found, that was something I was comfortable with and probably had a little bit better expertise in, and patience, because it's limited.
There was one part of your career that I think it's really important, the experience that we had. I know that there was one time when your dad introduced you as, hey, this is my daughter, Karen. Yeah. She's been hired and fired by 5 different governors. What was that about?
Oh, let's see. It was his, I believe it was 85th birthday. Not too long ago, but he's had a couple since, thank God. And he just, he found it comical. I know he's a sense of pride. My dad is very tough on me, and, we represent pretty much opposite political points of view that we talk about every day. He's in Arizona and I'm in New York. So he goes to golf, still golfs, during the week, and calls me at 6 a.m. while I'm going to work at 9 a.m. And so that was about, that I believe in, serving. And what happens in government, when administrations change, you get fired. So I think it was a pride and a little ribbing of his eldest daughter.
I was going to say the burden of being the eldest daughter and the eldest child is
Absolutely.
really tough sometimes.
No question.
So Karen, here's a question for me. Out of all the things that we could be doing, right, with our time, our energy, why are we dedicating so much of your most valuable resource, your time, into serving the community in the way that you are? Because there's so many opportunities that you could have taken advantage of and paths you could have gone down.
Yeah. And I think it's, you've got to have, what's in your heart, what's in your soul. I mean, somebody, and how do you want to live? I've learned a long time ago. And I think, people said to me, you work 40, and we know it's more than 40 hours a week for most people, 40, 50, 60 hours a week, like what you do. Right. You've got one life to live. I think that's, really the motivation, and you have to everybody's got to find what's their personal motivation. I love waking up every day to say, what can I do to help out today? Some of my, my colleagues and my friends call me the connector, right? Oh no, I know, you go talk to him over here. I don't make it happen. I don't get you the job. I don't solve your problem, but I hopefully can get you to the right people because we've earned it, over the years, because I hope I do that for other people. So, I think you really got to have, what's your mission in life, right? It's not just about the job. It's what's your mission. And somebody did an article many years ago about me. She's about her family, her work, and her community. And thankfully everybody's in her web, in her spider web that way. And I thought that was a good portrayal because, that's the priorities for me too. I think I told you I hung up on a governor one time when my son was getting off his first day of kindergarten. I wasn't going to miss that. I know it was important what he had to talk to me, but Governor, this is first, right? I got to do this. Now you don't do that all the time, but for that, it was critical because I was never going to experience that again. So you've got to have, that's my mission statement, I guess. And that reporter, frankly, helped me to get it when he wrote it. She's about her family, work, and her community. That's it. That's exactly what I am.
Isn't it so important to establish that hierarchy, especially when we're the leader of such a large organization with such heritage, that we do have to establish those boundaries for ourselves, or these roles and responsibilities can really take everything from us.
Right. It's internal and external, right? You got to feel it. You can't have a mission statement doesn't work for you, right? But you've got to have something that really, feels right, and that you can live it every day and do it authentically. I know people use that word a lot. I rarely do. I use you got to look in the mirror every day. Right. And that's how, I have to live, whether it's decisions, whether it's supporting somebody or saying no, where you have to do sometimes, I've got to look in the mirror and I've got to feel good about that. And, I've got two parents, 85 and 85, my mother yesterday, my father, 87. I watch them and I know life is beautiful, but it's also comes to a close at some point. Right. And so I want to make sure that, as I certainly do right now, I don't have any regrets in my life, or there's certain things I wish I would have done better. Right. In life, personally and professionally, but I don't live with my regrets. And I tell my kids the same thing.
How do you come to that sense of self-awareness, right? With living with no regrets, with all the things that you've accomplished, all the different spaces you've been in, it seems like, I'm guessing, that you've had a lot of draws on your time that can pull you away from those special moments in life. So how do you kind of come to that no regrets type of lifestyle? Well,
because somebody will say like, my other colleagues and friends that, they'll say like, oh, we don't do where's Waldo, we do where's Karen, because I go, right? And I like it, and my father says, you're getting older. You have to slow down. I'm like, Dad, why? I mean, is there something going on that I don't know about? Because I'm fine. Now, don't think I don't fall asleep sometimes when the movie goes on. And, my two adult children say, Mom, why do you want to watch this movie? 10 minutes in, as soon as you sit down, there's a sign that goes across the bottom that says, Mom, time to go to sleep now. Because it's like a puppy, right? I go. And then when you sit, you kind of collapse. That's okay with me. Right. That's okay. And I enjoyed, I enjoyed people. I enjoy being with folks. I enjoy doing fun things. I enjoy making a difference. So if that's a good day for me, and I appreciate, having the opportunity to do that in so many different aspects of my life.
One of the best things that I have the opportunity to do on this podcast is dive a little bit deeper into the origin story of how we became the great leaders who sit across from me. So one of the questions I love asking my guests is, if you were to go back in time, let's call it 15 years, and sit across the table from a younger version of Karen and say, hey, this is the advice that I have for you as you navigate this next chapter or season of your career and life. What would you say to that younger version of you?
You know what? Believe it or not, and anybody who knows me for a long time would think it would be very odd that I would say that, but I do live by it now. And I was going through actually 15. You hit a sweet spot there. Very difficult. I had to do the math in my head, but a very difficult time. Then in my personal life and even professional life, I was frankly. I was whichever one governor I was on, I think the fourth governor, I was, it was the holiday time. I was, they're not going to keep me on for a change in administration. And everybody had expected them to, and, because it was a Democratic administration, I am a Democrat. And I was going in the middle of a divorce, it was the holidays. I'm thinking, oh my God, how am I going to show the people? Still had staff, right? Still had, to send a message to people, that were part of my organization. And I really just had to say one day at a time. I learned that from all our folks in recovery that, although I'm not in recovery, I supported 100%. And, they often told me that. And I said, you're right. And my mother, who often said, put on your big girl pants, let's go. Put on your big girl pants. And she just said it to me again yesterday. Sometimes you just got to put on your big girl pants. I'm like, you're right, Mom. And so these are the mantras, right, that stick in your head, and you have to have them sometimes to get through those days that are often very difficult.
I had the fortune yesterday actually doing one of our rare in-person podcast episodes with the CEO of an organization called the Grant to Gift Autism Center, CEO named Brian Hager. And he talked about some of the more challenging times that he's come through in his life. He had to really focus on chunking down. And that's exactly what we're talking about here. The one day at a time. How do I get from here to there by making it as tactical as possible to kind of tackle these challenges as well.
Yeah,
so I really appreciate it.
That's really the only way, because it can get overwhelming, and somebody will say, oh, next month I'm like, next month is about 2 years in my future. Right. So I'm doing this week. And, I often find like Sundays is kind of a sweet spot for me, when I can just look at the calendar. What do we look like? I'm out 3 nights. Okay. I got to try to do something in one night, I've got to make sure I see this person. All right, let's just plan it out. So I'm kind of a chunker by the day and by the week.
I actually had a friend who actually just sent me a text message before we recorded this episode and said, hey, what are your Halloween plans? And I said, honestly, I haven't even thought that far in the future. I'm just focused on the here right now.
That's at least 2 years. Yeah.
Exactly.
2 years. Yeah.
So here's the question for you. When we take the helm of an organization that's been around for 190 years, we might be coming across some resistance by saying, we've done things a certain way for a long time here. How have you been able to implement change? Because I realize over the last 10 years, you guys have gone from 20 million to about 32 million in total revenue and budget. How have you been able to accomplish that substantial change in the time that you've been able at the helm?
Well, again, because, coming in when I did to Vanderheyden, it was really in a crisis. They were, I think I shared with you previously, but, the state of New York was all over them, as far as, program deficiencies. Money was very, very difficult. They didn't know how they were going to make the next payroll. And so when folks are in a crisis, sometimes it's not easy to lead, but if you can give a sincere, and committed direction and be confident in that direction, that helps move it along. That's not to say I didn't hear like, oh no, we're not doing that. Or what's she doing? What is she doing? Right. I don't know if she can be our savior. Maybe she will be. I don't know, because people are fear. Organizations go through trauma, right? Just like individuals go through trauma. So that was the situation at Vanderheyden. And, I had to, have the game plan. I usually operate, especially when I first go in somewhere, 100-day game plan, kind of assess where are we, what are we doing, out and about, meet everybody, and kind of get their thoughts and ideas, and then kind of come up with, okay, here are the concentrations. And, that's really it. I had to make sure with, again, good team members, get the finances in order. You can't pay people. Nobody's going to work for you. You can't take care of kids if you don't pay people. So, got those in order. We had a lot of property. Okay. That's the only asset we had. I'm not a realtor. I don't know anything about it, but we're going to sell this property because I've got to pay off some of this debt. So you kind of go, it's very simple. You go back to the basics. Where's the money? Like you do in your own home. right? Where's the money coming from? How much do I get to spend? All right. If I'm spending more than I got to do more. I either have to get another job or I have to get other assets. I've got to trade in some money. I've got to get a loan, something to help me through. So that's exactly refinancing, all those things, that you have to do to increase your asset base, and then, put it to the people, which obviously for most organizations, nonprofits, it's about the staff. How can I get them, in the right places and pay them, so they're solid and stick and we can continue the mission on. So many good years, a lot of people working very hard, but, I think we've finally hit those sweet spots, never to get comfortable, but just where we can continue to grow and change lives to save lives. That's the hope.
I had an amazing CEO on the show previously, and he said, great leaders look at challenges as opportunities. And it sounds like you've had that mindset as you've kind of come into the organization and other challenges. And I think
that that's, a little bit about my background in like crisis work, ER work. Right. If something was going so well, and we're doing fine now, but there's always, in the environment that we're in politically and financially, and certainly after COVID, it's always changing. And if it wasn't, and if I didn't have 700 kids that had 700 different personalities and another 500 staff, frankly, I wouldn't be here, because they're kind of what make me, thrive. Like, what's going on? What can we do better? How can we help you? Right. And they're as unique as the person is. So there's always something different and changing every day. Sometimes great, sometimes not so great. So we're always working on that, and how we can, what does the future look like, for those individuals, as well as our team members, as well as the organization as a whole.
One of the biggest challenges that I've become aware of since I've started hosting this podcast, as I sit across the table from so many CEOs of nonprofits, is the topic of nonprofit CEO burnout. Mm-hmm. And I've been able to kind of sum it up in this way. Often when we are serving our community and trying to combat such macro issues that we're dealing with, diagnosis level or rates every single year continue to rise. More and more children are being diagnosed with autism. It's often that when we get our goals right, they're a finish line, a checkpoint, or a destination. But when we get it wrong, our goals feel like a horizon. We take one step closer to them and it moves one step further away. How have you been able to stay grounded in the fact of the accomplishments and the achievements that you've had in the organization, and making sure that those goals that you guys have set as a mission don't turn into that horizon?
Yeah, I think, two things I would say is that change is always constant. Right. And you have to have a vision, a forest for the trees thinking, and I do, I can see us where we could be 5 years, 10 years from now. What do we need based on the people we serve? 190 years ago, as we spoke about, a group of women got together and said, too many kids, without food, shelter, clothing. That was the origination of the Troy Orphan Asylum at the time, that has, morphed into Vanderheyden. Now it's, what do they do when they leave here? They're safe here. They're secure. They're eating. But how are they going to support themselves in what job, what career? Where are they going to live after 21 if you don't have some kind of a family support, somebody to pay that first security deposit, somebody to help you move? When you go to the ER at 3:00 in the morning, who are you calling to pick you up? Where are you spending the holidays? That's the job that we have to be part of, planting those seeds and making sure that they're blooming and they're stable, because life's too hard for anybody. Now, take that I don't have a functioning mother, father, aunt, grandmother, what am I going to do at 18, 21, and I'm all on my own? What's car insurance? Do I have to pay taxes? All those things. So that's part of I think the challenge now. And there's always challenges, because life is so precious, and it's so, it can be so so hard to navigate. And if you have any, mental health, disorder or issue, if you have, Asperger's, autisms, or you just have maybe an addiction that you're struggling with every day, that adds on top of, how do I pay the rent? How do I get the car? Is there a bus that goes down to this, to this stop, where I can get an interview? So, I think that's it. You always have to keep your eye on the prize, that's why some of the phrases I use are so very simple. Changing lives to save lives. That's what we're doing. Changing lives to save lives. Because if we don't plant those seeds, right, you can't see and ensure that end result happens. We don't save every individual. You know what I mean? We know that that's not the case, but are we doing everything we can to plant the seeds, and give them the tools that they need to fulfill a great life?
This is a big topic that we've heard across the landscape of healthcare over the last years. I'm going to use this word, whole person health. Right? We've heard this as a buzzword, which talks about we need to be able to address the multiple complexities that come to supporting an individual. How do you do that with so much on the line, with such a legacy of an organization? There's so much complexity in pulling the community resources together. It has to kind of feel daunting sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, sure it does. You know what I mean? Because everybody's needs are different, right? Everybody, not everybody wants to, go to Starbucks, right? Not everybody wants to. I'm being facetious about it, but you've got to look at the individual, what they want, and do you want to go to school? You don't want to go to school. You know what I mean? Do you want to have a part-time job and then live with roommates, right? Can you cook? Right? Or can you survive on something? Because not everybody can go, out to, get Subway and Chick-fil-A or all the other things that they do that is too expensive. So, you have to really just, kind of go. It's basic social work tenet. Go where your client is and then move up from that. Sometimes it's moving an inch. Sometimes it's 3 feet. But you got to keep going at it. And frankly, that is, kind of the social work 101, as we said, the tenet of social work, go where your client is, try to make wherever they're at a little bit better, just a little bit better. And then it grows and people get accustomed to it, right? Then I can do that. Now I have a young girl. There was an interview somebody did and we have a thrift store that we open. And every time I walk in, she's like, Miss Karen, I am not doing that register. I will not do that register. I'm like, oh yeah, you are. Yeah, you are. Come on. We're going to do the register. Now it's not about the register. It's about doing something and trying it with support, so she can do something else. It's conquering a fear, a little fear, right? Just doing the buttons and then feeling good about yourself, because many of the individuals that have all these different varying concerns and disabilities just don't feel good about themselves. So the little things, you know what I mean? The little things mean a lot. And that's what we try to do. Celebrate the little positive, childhood experiences. We always talk about adverse childhood experiences. We're trying to concentrate more on positive childhood experiences. Like, we've got a special needs school, but we're going to have a prom. I'm not sure always how I'm going to pay for it, but we're going to have a prom, right? Because that's a rite of passage for somebody in high school. Right? Graduation is beautiful here because it's a rite of passage. They may not graduate from anywhere again, but you're going to remember the one time you wore the cap and gown and you crossed the stage, right? So all those things they build, for in a normal, which I don't know anybody who really has that, a normal childhood setting, that's what you do, right? If all things are going well. When you have like a family that has been somewhat dysfunctional, or you have your own issues, you've got to find the ways to achieve those in a different way.
In 2022, the Surgeon General came onto a national broadcast and said the biggest threat to the American society is not another viral pandemic, but an epidemic of isolation and loneliness.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%.
When you were talking there, I was thinking about the word community. There's a phrase that we've all heard at one point in time: it takes a village to raise a child. And sometimes it's the community of the organizations who are standing up and providing those normal experiences, if you will, for people to be able to feel supported by maybe some of the gaps that they don't have in their personal life as well.
Right. Well, one of the things like in housing that I'm concentrating now, as far as my forest for the trees, is where do they go from here? Where do individuals that 18 or 21, if they don't have those supports, right? Or even if they do, and it's difficult time, where do they go? And my idea, our idea is to do a young adult assisted living, no different than all the seniors are in assisted living now. And what's so critical about that? They have Walmart Wednesday, and I'm not trying to plug Walmart, but I'm just saying Walmart Wednesday, or we're going to take a bus trip to see the leaves, you know what I mean, in up north, right? It's a community connection. I have my own space, right? I have my own studio apartment, or I have my living room, and I'm going to watch Jeopardy and you're going to watch, you know what I mean? Something else. But we're going to come together, maybe have a meal. It's special. It's Spanish night. It's, Italian night, something that you can make choices, but there's somebody there. So those apartment, that's what I want to do for the younger generation. 18 to 25, we're losing folks. we're losing folks.
It's a huge
Many
gap.
adult children still live at home. Okay. I personally, if that's where you need to live to connect, but that's not always the healthiest thing. But we know that, with the video games and all those things, it's very easy with Facebook and all those things and the phone just to stay here. That is not helping us at all. And COVID brought it in. COVID brought, frankly, some good things like, what we're doing here.
Telehealth, telemedicine, telecommunication.
Yes, telehealth, telemedicine, and, just video Zooms, all that. That's great to a point. I mean, I don't even do them. Like if folks that even in my own world here, they'll, say, I'll just, I'll go on the computer. I'm like, you're upstairs, walk down,
come down here,
pick up the phone. Right. I just can't. And mostly because it's my style. I enjoy doing this, to have a connection, but I'm up and walking around. I like seeing people face to face, eyes, you know what I mean? How can I help you? Or I care about you. I went to a funeral today of a friend's mother, and, being present was so important. I could see it in their faces, right? That just me being present, because I could. If I couldn't, I couldn't, right? But being present just to, share an experience that is so critical for my close friend, right? In the loss of her mother. The same is true for going, to, seeing their first movie, maybe sitting down in a first restaurant. I often do that with the individuals we serve because it's great just to do that one-on-one, for me. But it's also an experience for them, to do something that maybe they've never done before.
I hope that we're seeing the pendulum swing back in the opposite direction. One of the conversations that I often have on the podcast is about distraction, which is something that previous generations have never really dealt with. But here are some shocking statistics. The average 18-year-old today spends about 9 hours out of their day on their device, meaning we're often not getting 9 hours of sleep. So the digital world is becoming more real than even our dream world is. But here's the issue. If we extrapolate out that 9 hours per day for the rest of someone's life, that's 24 years on their device. And I think that we're seeing some macro societal issues when it comes to distraction, being alone together, aka being in a restaurant, everybody's on their own device, and still not feeling that sense of connection. So that presence element is more important than ever.
Right. And I think it's everywhere, right? I mean, I do, again, I have adult children. We have, aunts, uncles, everybody coming in. The meal isn't every night, but when we have it, they are not there. It has to be emergency upon emergency, right? Me included. Right. Because I work 24/7, that's CEOs do that. You have the flexibility, but somebody calls you 2:00 in the morning, you pick up the phone because you're the end, it's the end is you. But there's certain times you just can't, right? Because it's a way of, and even in this funeral, when I was at the wake, people are in line and they're on their phone. Now you're not, at a funeral, like it's church. Right. You don't go on that in my life, what my mother educated me, like, are you kidding me? You know what I mean? You sit, but it's a way to talk to people. Oh, how did you know? You don't know the people that are in line with the wake. Oh, how did you know, Lorraine? Oh, I'm friends with her daughter's sister. Oh, okay. You know what I mean? And that's, I'm friend with her other sister. That's what makes a community, right? And that's so important because, and I also, it's a way to celebrate that individual, just like you're trying to celebrate your time together. Even during COVID, and my kids, they're 25 and 24. I, shouldn't call them kids, but I do. The idea was dinner together and then we played a game. You know what I mean? Because it was too much for everybody Zooming, because they were doing their classes in college and, I wasn't, because people in human service were all at work. Nobody was cleaning a closet, during COVID, because we have people we're taking care of. But it's, you have to push that. And I even say, even with my friends, when we get going, like, hey, phone's down, and I'm an offender. Don't think I'm pious. I'm not. I'm an offender. But, you have to be reminded because it's just, it's just as much as it's freeing on many things, because I can be 24/7 and still be at my, daughter's tennis match. Right. So that's good, but on the other hand, it's also just this, like you said, this isolation factor. What's on the Facebook is more important. And we say in my family, the Facebook, because that's how my mother says it. What's more important than on that versus like, hey, how you doing today? How was school? You know what I mean? Oh, your sister got in a car accident. I'm sorry. Did they need anything? Just normal conversation. So that's one of my, I think missions as well, just to reduce it. And, now you can track it. Like, even my kids, they see that they're tracking. They're like, Mom, oh my God, just think about that. I use the same thing. Now I got better statistics on your 24 years, but you don't sleep 9 hours. And so you were on 7.2? Oh my God, so I think it's up to us to make those. People have to do that, right? It's like a campaign. We have to make it a campaign.
There's intentionality that's there, though.
Right.
One of my previous guests talked about a really tragic story. There was an individual, a young man, he lived in San Francisco, and he was going through a really dark time. And unfortunately, he went to the Golden Gate Bridge and jumped off and ended up dying, right? And the police officers recovered this young man's body, found his ID, went back to his apartment, found a note. And his note said, "Today is the day in which I'm no longer going to be here. But one thing will stop me from doing what I'm about to do. I'm going to walk the 3 miles to the Golden Gate Bridge, and if a single person looks at me, smiles, and says, 'How are you doing today?' I'm not going to do it." So there's an intentionality that we need to carry in the world, because those small moments, Karen, mean so much to so many people.
And you'll find, I will talk to everyone. And I just, I'm not a creep, I hope, you know what I mean? But if you're walking down and, on the street and it's the only person, I always say hello. How are you? You know what I mean? And just keep going. They don't have to say anything, but that's on me, right? That's on me, and it's even, you think, oh my God, what could this person be? Or they're scared. Now, I also have to stop it sometimes when people will, when I've been on the subway in different places, I have social worker on my forehead. So somebody will tell me their whole life story, in 3 minutes. And sometimes you got to back off from that. Oh, okay. All right. Well, it's important. I do use the phone for that on occasion, because I'll do it, but you can't go through the whole, there's balance, as we know, but I think it's really a campaign. It's a campaign that we have to do. And I'm never going to forget that story. Never going to forget that story, because that reminds me that it's okay. Because my folks will say, why do you talk to everybody, Mom? Not everybody wants to talk. And I'm like, now I'm going to tell them that story, because sometimes they do.
I want to talk a little bit about a campaign here, and I'm going to use this in a little bit of a different term. When it comes to inspiring the next generation, right, of great advocates for our community, people who are going to show up who want to serve their community, we have more challenges, and I'll use the word distractions, right, that can take us towards Instagram and TikTok and all these other different types of careers. So how are you casting a vision to inspire the next generation of great contributors to our community to come work for an amazing organization like your guys's?
Well, I certainly do. And I just gave a presentation the other day about what's your mission, right? Get in the car, your mission, having the best car, your mission, you know what I mean? Or, going out every night, you know what I mean? To the best player. Is that your mission? And if it is, okay. But I think it's sad, I think it's sad. What I do with people, what are you doing to give back? What are you doing? I'm not saying recreate. You don't have to be the CEO of this organization, but what is the small thing you're doing? Oh, you're going to help the dogs on Saturday? Perfect. Because you're outside yourself, right? You're just outside yourself. When the dog comes up, you don't have the phone. Now, yeah, they do take pictures. I shouldn't say that. Everybody takes cute pictures, but you know what I mean? You have something else that you're doing. Are you just taking your grandmother out on Sunday afternoon for dinner or a ride? Great. That's the time, right? Because you're never going to get that time back again. So I think that you just have to just remind people. And I really think this next generation is more, I think they're more open to things, you know what I mean, than past generations to, lesbian, bisexual, gay. They don't care. They don't even do the labels. They were like, oh, okay, it's Sue. No, she's Tom. Okay, and I think that's wonderful, much more open to things, but it's now the next step is the connection, because they got pulled back even, a little bit more with the phones and during COVID and before, but pulled back. So I think you just have to, I keep saying, what's your mission? What makes you feel good every day? You know what I mean? If your job doesn't make you feel good, that's okay. Because sometimes you got to work to make money, but what else are you going to do? What are you doing at 7:30? You know what I mean? Did you volunteer? Did you go just give the neighbor cookies because you like to bake? Something. And that's what we do with the individuals here, even at Vanderheyden. What is the one charity? Everybody has a charity goal. I don't name what the charity is. I don't care if you're cleaning up the cemetery for garbage. I don't care if you're just talking to the kid you don't like, because that's some are charity, right? Because they don't want to do it. I don't have time. I don't like them. But are you doing that? That's great. Something, because I think that is what makes better citizens, better citizens and better people. And I think, and I hope that gives people a purpose so they don't jump off that bridge.
That's how we build momentum towards change, right? It's all those small incremental moments that end up becoming the tidal wave that has the change that we want in our society around us.
Yeah. But I think like you said, purpose is a key. Mission. I say it's a mission because that's social work, you know what I mean? But it's my life mission. And again, it all goes together personally and professionally. But I think it is the purpose. What you do as a job, maybe your purpose. That's great. That's great. But what are the other ones? You know what I mean? What are the other purposes? And, some people like to work with animals. Some like to work with the elderly. Some like to work with developmentally disabled. Some people don't like any of it. And they really just want to go and, take a walk, but, and they may want to give to that park system. And the money is okay too. You can be purposeful with money. That's fine. But what is it in your gut? And that takes some introspection that some people don't always have time with. But even for the younger generation, I say like, okay, what's your favorite TikTok? And why? Why though? Why? Because he's cooking something or because he has clothes? You know what I mean? Or you like the makeup? Don't care. I don't care. But what's in your gut, because that's usually what causes the issues later on, right? Because you don't have purpose, you don't have mission. You may have all the money. People say this all the time. Money, my grandfather used to say, he had $1 million a day because he had good health. If you have your health, you have $1 million a day. So I'd say, when I try to ask him, do you have a lot of money? I have $1 million a day. I said, you do really? And as I got older, I understood like, you know what I mean? He doesn't have $1 million a day, but he did in his head. And that was his attitude. And that purpose goes with attitude, right? What's your attitude? Do you wake up, oh my God, it's another day? Or do you wake up with, you know what I mean? Okay, what am I going to do today? Not, solve the world's greatest problem of hunger and poverty, but what am I going to do to make the world a little bit better today?
There's an element of accountability in there, which I think is really important to emphasize as well.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. To yourself,
what I mean?
To yourself. Others, probably they can see it, but what is it to yourself? Right? Because that's, even in therapy, we learn like if you have some depression, or you're just feeling lonely or feel bad, doing something for someone else makes all the difference in the world. It doesn't cure, obviously significant depression, but it helps move forward, right? Just the small steps. Sometimes the small steps mean all the world.
All these experiences that you've acquired throughout your career have been just small strokes on the tapestry that is you as an amazing leader. I want to talk a little bit about your leadership style and how you become such an effective leader. Now, one of the things that I recognize with a lot of different leaders at different points in their career is often we have a really tough time relinquishing responsibility to other people to execute on our vision. Now, there's an interesting principle called Pareto's principle, which is 80-20. 20% of your work produces 80% of the results. Mm-hmm. I'm reading a really interesting book right now by a guy named Dan Martell, who talks about the role of a CEO is basically to get out of the way and give trust into others so they can execute on your vision. If they're 80% as good as you are at executing on what you say and the vision you cast, that's 100% awesome. How have you been able to kind of lean into your ability to trust your team members to execute on the vision that you outlay?
Well, we've come in, and I'm not sure if I heard this or maybe I made it up. I don't know. But we're doing a little bit more now on, because I feel it, on micro-succession, not succession planning, but micro-succession. How do you grow within your current job by taking more responsibilities? For example, I've got somebody, that, I'm not going anywhere right now, but, you have to pay attention to, who could be it. And I have one individual that said like, yeah, I'd never do your job. I want to do the finances. I don't want to ever do that. And I said, oh, interesting. You know what I mean? Okay. Slowly, but surely. Right. He said, well, I shouldn't be so hard and fast about that. Maybe, and I said, but you don't have to be me. you have to have the balance of somebody with me. Like I have the balance with somebody like you, right? In a CEO and COO role, and you slowly, what I try to do, and you hope you're always modeling, right? I mean, I do try to do that, model. But then I always say, the best thing is, well, what do you think? What do you think we should do? And sometimes because they aren't me and they aren't the leader, I have to say, well, no, we're not going to go in that direction, but here's why. Not just no, right? No. I mean, if you think even as a parent, as an aunt, whatever, nobody wants to be told no. Nobody gets that. But if you say, hey, listen, can't do that, and here's why, right? It makes, we teach at the same time we're saying no. I mean, I've fired people that have hugged me, you know what I mean? Because I've said, we're going in a different direction. This isn't a right place for you. I will do anything I can to help you, but this isn't going to work. We've tried, right? But we have to go in a different direction, right? Different direction. And let's talk about where that might be, but it's not going to be here, right? Because we've tried that. So, tears because they know it's not the right place, right? It's not, it doesn't always go that way. I don't want to make it sound like that. It's not always so easy, but it's really just doing, trying to, and again, we're kind of using the term micro-succession, grow within your current job, just so you see maybe what you might want to do next, right? Instead of just, no, I can never do that because I'm not like them, right? You know what I mean? Oh, I can never do that because I can't go out and meet people like you do, Karen. I can't go out and do that. You're right. Maybe you can't, but maybe you'd have a vice president of marketing that can do that. But you still, it's really about showing up. And do you have confidence? So, that's the balance. So, it was just interesting conversation that it's like, this is like, maybe it's a thought, but the micro-succession says, let me just grow within my job to see if I might and I do a lot, on the talent management side where we pick groups of people that folks have recommended and just come to a board meeting, see what you think. What's your thought? But you're not there as an observer. You're there as a participant. Right. So if I ask like, hey, does anybody know, where we can get this particular vendor, like everybody's part of the conversation. So you have to help people model and have them it's all about growth. Right. You know what I mean? And some people, and I'm good with that. I'm going to be this accountant. I like being an accountant. I do this from 8:30 to 4:30. And then I do this other stuff. That's what I want. Okay. But what's the one thing that you think you can do for yourself to be happier in that 8:30 to 4:30? There's 100 different questions, but that's just asking the questions is half of it, and then to trust and support the confidence, and build that confidence, but also know that, even when you say no and you explain why, you can still build somebody's confidence. But hey, listen, good thought, but here's why I'm going to do it this way. Here's why, and think about that. Cause it's always about learning. We all got here because we learn. I'm still learning. If I stop learning, then any CEO should go.
We're talking about cultivating a healthy sense of curiosity here. That's what I hear you talking about.
Yeah. Wanting to learn, wanting to know, like thinking, oh, well, maybe that's a good idea. I went to a conference. Now I have no business really going to a cybersecurity conference because the couple of presenters, I didn't even know some of the terms they used, but a couple spoke to me. Right. But I have to know enough I've got directors of IT, right? And that's great. But I've got to know a little bit more about this. So it was good because CEOs have to know what questions to ask. They don't always have to solve it, but they do have to know what questions to ask, to get them in the right direction. So, the CE or the chief information officer is going the right path. I don't know. I'll have to know every detail about the cloud, you know what I mean? And the performance, of this particular beautiful box. But, we do need to know the right questions. So I'm glad I went. I learned a great deal, and it was interesting because other CEOs were there because we're like, okay, we don't know what we don't know. So we got to learn what we don't know to at least secure the border, as they say, secure the border.
Yeah. What got us here is not going to get us there.
Right. And there's just so neat and different things. And, I came back and I said, hey, listen, I know we're covered to my CIO. I know we're covered on this, but what are we doing with this actually? You know what I mean? And it was just more information for me because you have to, you're the realtor, you're the security agent, you're the, set up the party planner, I had to sell wood from some of our trees sometimes, you know what I mean? To get money. That's all good, but you got to be your many roles as a CEO, and you have to just feel comfortable. Just being part. You don't have to excel in it. I don't want to do the spreadsheet, right? If I had to do that, you know what I mean? I would not like coming to work every day, but I got a good person that does the spreadsheet. I just need to know what I need to know on that. So we're still, kind of going in the right direction, obviously.
Karen, one of the traditions we have here on the podcast is having our previous guest ask you a blind question. So one of the questions that came from a previous guest was, what makes you a distinct leader and sets you apart from others?
It's funny that I think I'm going to say humor. I think I'm going to say humor right now because nicely, I got an award last week. And as we were doing the panel, I was saying some things and interjecting, some vulnerability, but humor on myself and for others, and I hope that's it because I'll be like, even to our kids or our staff, like, you guys got to be kidding me, right? What? You know what I mean? And so, I think I said something, somebody was talking at this event about the imposter syndrome. And do you ever feel, especially because they only talk to women about that, but do you ever feel you're an imposter? And they went on and I said, no, we call it the holy shit moments, right? That's what we do. Laugh, laugh, laugh. But that is who I am, right? And frankly, I hope, it's about the humor and it's about that, that I like people, I like talking to them. I get my best ideas from the people we serve, no matter any CEO does, from the people you serve and the people who are on your team, right? You ask them what they think. And, I'm open. I hope I'm open about it, but the humor makes, it's just fun, it makes it fun.
Karen, everybody who's tuning in and listening today obviously has been inspired and encouraged to be a better leader, a better business person, and a better impactor like you are. How can we find more information about the amazing work that you guys are doing at your organization? How can we support the mission and spread the word?
Oh, that's great. That's great. Thank you very much. Well, lovely website, vanderheyden.org, vanderheyden.org, because nobody seems to spell it. I had a hard time at the very beginning. Just to get on there, learn about us, there's so many ways, that anybody can support, but even if you don't live in our area or our community, I would look at the organizations in your community and just show up to one of their volunteer days. Just show up, right? Or when somebody's saying we're collecting bottles for, the Alzheimer's walk, collect bottles, drop them off. See if that's your, passion, your purpose, outside work. Right? Your work can be your passion, but, I'm part of other organizations too that I care about. My son has cystic fibrosis. I raise money for that because obviously that's important. I walked for a friend who had Alzheimer's, because those are things that are important. There's other things I don't do, right? Because I'm not as connected to them and people should just find that. And I hope they do in their community. So yes, come on, vanderheyden.org. You want to send me money? That's great too. You know what I mean? For the kids' recreation fund, but most importantly, get involved, in your community just with one thing, just to start.
And that's a beautiful place for us to put a wrap on it today. Karen, once again, you are the definition of heart and hustle. Thank you for joining the show.
Thank you very much. Great.
And that's a wrap.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.